Right then, so this week on Iron Horse Railways, I'm going to be looking at improving Rapido's Lion locomotive. It's a really nice little model, but I think there is room for some minor improvements we can make on it. And I'm going to show you how to do it. I'm also going to show you how to make your points look a bit more pointy. So my points are a little bit barren, and on the other layout, I've got these manual switches here. We have the manual ones because they're within a yard, and that's fine. But what about for the quote-unquote mainline points? These two here will be mainline controlled, and that there would be yard controlled. And then you've got a third one down here, which would also be mainline, because this technically is the main line. It's just not connected to the rest of the world. So what can we do to make that just a little bit nicer? Let's have a look at the options available to me, shall we? So we'll do some point motors. These are the Westinghouse's ones from DCC Concepts. I've taken the liberty of painting these already, just using a little bit of Vallejo Model Air Grey. Cement grey, looks really nice. I've got some spare sleepers to mount them on. I'll need some more than that because that's not enough. And then of course I've got these lovely electrical cabinets from West Hill Wagon Works, which I'll paint up in a little bit. I'm going to get some wiring as well, just to suggest that there's some circuitry going on. I did want their new ones, but they saw that by the time I got to them. So first things first, I'm going to get these painted. I'm going to wet these attached to their sleepers, and then we're going to put them on the layout. So I'm just starting here by mixing a paint of my own creation. It's just a little bit of DCC Concepts clear yellow paint with a little bit of Humbrol matte coat. On the pictures of these point motors in real life, there's like this little box at the end of them is yellow. So I'm just going to add a little bit of the yellow paint to that, just to make it, well, as close to the real thing as is possible, really. Now I've got 3 of them to do, so this little tiny bit, little small brush like I'm doing it there, is plenty to get this job done. So I'm just shaking up and decanting a little bit of Vallejo, I think it's cement grey, into my little palette there. And I'm going to get on with painting the cabinets from West Hill Wagon Works. Now they're 3D printed, but they're quite sturdy, so I'm just snapping them from the sprue, but I'm still keeping the bottoms attached so I can hold them whilst painting them. That just makes it a little bit easier to get your brush in there and without getting your fingers too dirty. So it's good to have something drying whilst you're working on the next part. So we're going to finish up painting the cabinets here, and then once I've finished painting these, I'm going to set them all aside to dry. And then I'm going to work on the sleepers, which the point motors are going to sit on. Again, if you look at the real ones of these, they all sit on little wooden sleepers. These are just spare ones from a little sprue track I had. So preparing them is quite easy. I'm just snipping off the little bits and pieces of excess plastic and then just snipping off before the shoes on one end of the sleepers there. The reason will become a little more clear later on, and then I'm going to cut off on the other side just before the sleeper shoe starts. Again, this will make more sense when you see all of them lined up, cleaned up next to each other. So as always, it's best to do a dry fit before gluing these down. So line your sleepers up as I've done here, and just put a little tiny amount of super glue on there. I mean, you can use PVA if you want, but it does slip around a little bit too much, for my opinion. And because of the type of plastics we're using here, we do have a couple of seconds of adjustment. So you just literally take it up, pop it on place there, be very careful, and just hold the sleepers slightly and gently push the point motor down, so there's a couple of millimeters of sleeper on either side of it, and that should seat nicely once the super glue dries. And then it really is just a case of repeating the process for as many of these point motors that you wish to deploy onto your layout. Again, each point motor takes around 4 sleepers, and the ones that I'm using have come with a little bit of connecting plastic so they stay in place. You can see them there, but we can snip that off once everything's dry. Now this next bit, I'm just going to do a little bit of light weathering. We've got a little bit of the DCC concepts. I think this is light rust or brown rust. And I'm only going to use a slight small dusting on the top of the point motors. If you look at, again, Google these, you'll see what I mean. They've got like a slight tinge to them. And I've not pre-coated this with anything. They aren't wet or anything. This is just dry on dry. It's not the best way of doing this, but it does ensure we don't overdo it at the same time. If you were to paint these with matte coat, this powder would really stick and it would entirely change the colour of the point motor, which is not something that we want to do at this moment in time. Now, once you've done this and you're ready to move on to the next part, all I did was use a little bit of Humbrol black wash, the enamel wash, give it a good shake, and then I just literally brushed over the whole thing just to get a little bit of contrast in there. It doesn't wash the powder off and it looks really nice. Now I didn't film that bit because I'm a bit silly, but I'm going to do the same process with the cabinets as well, but this time I'm going to use a little bit of the Humbrol, I think this is Smoke, but you can also use the DCC Concepts black one because it's about the same sort of shade and it just works for raising detail and bringing out it's really quite well. These cabinets from Westler Wagon Works, they're really lovely. They really are, and it just adds a little bit of something to your layout, and you never really realise what's missing until you add something to it and go, oh yeah, okay, that makes a lot more sense. And it's easy to fall into the trap of leaving your layout looking a little bit too bare. The real world has loads of little details that you tend to miss, and these just go a long way to adding those little details as well. So I'm going to finish up with these and then we're going to look at adding them onto the layout in place. And I know what I want to put these because I've already done this next bit, but you might want to just temporarily fix them so you have an idea of how they're going to fit together. This next bit is just, I'm going to glue it down into place. Now, I've looked at the positioning of the point motors and I think this is right. You have the small spirally end going towards the split or the toe or the turn-off part. And what I'm using there is, I think it's Liquitex. I'm not sure what it is. I think it's Liquitex or something like that. I can't remember the name of it, but it's essentially a matte medium. And it's a little bit thicker and stronger and less runny than PVA and sets clear and hard. Now I'm just positioning them roughly where the throw bar is, making sure that there's enough room for the throw bar to actually still move and won't interfere with the operation of the points. And again, you can just play with this a little bit as you want. Now, previously to doing this, I've had these in place loose, so I know where I want to put them, but you might want to just put them down for a few days and just see if you like where they are or where you want to move them around. And then you can think about locking them in place. Then we're going to do the same thing for the line side cabinets. I know that one fell over, don't worry about it. I'm going to use a little bit of blue tack to hold it in place, because they are quite light and I can't think of any other way to do it, so there we are, but we can hide that later on with weathering, painting, a little bit of shrubbery and what have you. So once everything is dry and in place, you can come back to it later on and add cabling and wiring and what have you. This is not something I'm going to do today because everything's quite wet. Hopefully I'll get a chance to do it tomorrow, but I'm not going to be going super mad with all this. I just want it to have a basic, what's the word I'm looking for? Representation. A basic representation of the workings of the points, rather than making them operate with magic. They can actually see there's some kind of mechanical connection between them, the motors and the cabinets. That's what I'm doing here, and I think it'll look pretty well when it's done. And we'll catch up with them a bit later. Moving on now, though. Hello, I'm Craig, and that's Lion. More specifically, Rapido's Lion. Now this loco has been released for a few weeks now, maybe about a month or so, and it's had a good reception. There are plenty of in-depth reviews out there which you can go and search for and look for and everything else. This is my take on it. Now, it's a non-sound fitted version, so this Lion doesn't particularly roar in any way, shape or form, but it has come under my stewardship for the time being. So after a little bit of running, I'm thinking of ways that we can improve this model. See how we get on, shall we? I was hoping to be able to stay alive in here, but there is not a lot of room inside this thing whatsoever. It is very minimal. There's only just enough room for the decoder, really. So getting a stay alive in there is, I don't think, going to be possible without some serious adaptation. So that's out of the way, but what else can we do? So one observation that I've made for the Rapido Lion is there's no option for couplings on the front there. Now, granted, you probably wouldn't want to do shunting with this locomotive. However, I run a heritage line and it would be nice to have the option to have it pulling or pushing or whatever, doing shunting on good strains or demonstration days or whatever. The tender has an L&MR pocket on it, the front doesn't. And because this locomotive is such high quality, all this is metal. So I can't drill it out, and if you can't mount anything inside it, and there's no way to fix an L&MR pocket on the inside. So what I've done is my favourite trick. A little bit of flexible wire. And what we're going to do is we've bent it thus, and it's going to sit on the inside of the saw bar there. Now I'm going to hold it there, glue it in place. I'm going to use PVA, then I can bend the bar down and you sort of get the idea. There we go, you can see the blue tack has been employed to hold the piece of wire in place. You can just see the super glue blobs there, but again, that's going to be weathered slightly so you won't see it. Once it's dry, you'll be able to bend the clip down to the same height as a regular tension lock coupling using this KR Models power button. You can see what I mean. It's just a bit too high at the minute, but once it's dry, I can bend it down a little bit, straighten it out, and that's the same method that I use on my Class 66 and my Curioscope Class 37, and the method works really well. So once that's dry, probably in the morning, we'll have a go at that, and then we'll do more things to this lovely model. So with regard to getting a stay alive to work with Lion, I am going to make the decision to have a permanently coupled match wagon behind the locomotive, which will pull a little, well, match wagon which will have a stay alive on it. Now, some people will say you don't need a stay alive, but well, I like to have a stay alive because it gives you that reassurance that you are going to have 100% reliable running, and it stops you breaking the immersion and, let's face it, the enjoyment of running your trains over a crossover or a point, because it's going to stall and you're going to have to get up and move it around. I think having a very small wagon behind it is a very small price to pay for perfect running. So how are we going to do it? First and foremost, we need a decoder which can actually make use of a stay alive. Now, it's going to have to be an X18. I could hardwire it, but I don't want to go down that route. So we've got a DCC Concepts Zen12 Blue, and that's got a stay alive wire already in place. Massive stay alive from DCC Concepts, which that's going to be going on the back of the match wagon, and some adaptive cabling and sockets and things, so I can actually unplug the stay alive from the decoder should I need to. Right then, let's pick out a match wagon, modify it, and then get all this wired up. So the tender is going to be our base of operations. The decoder's there. Now we're going to need to make a hole in here somewhere to feed the wire from the decoder to the stay alive to the wagon. This apparently is on a slight bloody roll. There you are. Now thankfully Rapido have already provided us with a nice hole, so hopefully we can get the decoder wire for the stay alive down under, and that should make things a lot easier. There we go, that's all fed through, and this little doohickey underneath still moves around nice and free, so it's not going to snag up. So get these wires in place, plug that bad boy in, test the decoder, make sure it works, then we can connect this to the match wagon. Very good. There we are, all fed through. Got them underneath this little brake rigging thing here. So I'm just going to bear them back a little bit and then connect it to the match wagon. Simple as that. Okay, so I've selected this Bachmann con-flat wagon I had spare. All I've had to do is on the flip side there, I've taken a hunt coupling and I've cut it down, put the magnet there, and I've put a hunt coupling on the tender of the other side. Now, because of the way that Rapido have done this, they put the NEM pocket there. So when you put this bit into the socket thing, I don't know what you want to call it, it sticks out quite a way. So without wishing to modify this any further, I thought it'd be easier just to put a little bit of hot glue on there, glue the magnet in place on the match wagon, so when they're the right round, they actually couple up really close. So that is superb. Next mission is to drill a small hole in this, mount the Stay Alive, and then wire it up underneath. Easy. There we are, small hole drilled in there. So yes, of course, now there's going to be a hole in there, but don't worry, because by the time we've got our Stay Alive on there, and we've hidden the Stay Alive, so it's going to be sort of a hidden load. We can imagine that there's tools covered up under here, and I may even put some other bits and pieces on this match wagon as well. So it looks like it has a actual use being towed behind. So the next bit is just connecting these to that, and that's easy. We're just going to use the connector. So if I need to separate the two, I can do, and that's it. There we are, all the components installed there. I know it looks a bit of a rat's nest at the minute, but it's quite simple. You've got this wire here which goes into the plug, which I've already taken the liberty of connecting. I'm just going to fasten this down either with a screw or a bit of hot glue if you want. Whatever you want to do. These wires will go to the Stay Alive, and these wires will go to the decoder, and it's as simple as that. Now I know one's black and blue and one's red and black, so black and black will go to black, and blue and red will go together for simplicity's sake. So I'm going to trim down the wire, just have a dry fit to see how much I need of it before cutting it back. Then I can solder it together, and then that, my friends, will be that. There we are, love the job. All soldered in now, wires shortened down. I just need to pull these back through and obviously insulate them. And same with the Stay Alive, that's already soldered on there. They just need insulating. And once that's done, I can run it. So here we are on the layout. You see we've got power because the lights are all on. Now I've not set up the CVs for this yet, so please excuse the shaky hand cam, but if we throw this bugger into reverse and I turn the track power off, as you can see, watch the lights go out. It's still moving, really good. Jolly good. I'm going to call that a success. Now then, we've done all this. We've got our permanent match wagon in place. We've got our coupling on the front. Watch it pick up and then reverse. There we go. Oh yes, I'm super pleased with that. That's turned out really well. We need to quite clearly decorate this and hide the Stay Alive with the power of magic and what have you. And I think a couple more details are missing from Lion. I think we need to just add a driver, add some train lamps, and then maybe even give it a slight weathering. Okay then, this is probably going to upset a lot of people, but we have Lion on the weathering bench. Now, I'm not going to do this like a Class 66 or something that's been on freight workings all weekend. This is Lion. For a very short period, I believe in the 80s, it was running about doing bits and pieces here and there, and this is the sort of work that it's going to be doing on my layout, and therefore the weathering will reflect that. Now, anyone that's been to a Heritage Steam Gala Day will know that even the most clean of locomotives, the brightest and shiniest of examples, will still have dirt and soot and things around the chimney, smoke box, running gear, and a little bit on there as well. There might even be some fallout on the top of the boiler here, and certainly some very mild streaking on the, I think that's the boiler. I'm not sure what that is. Firebox. As well as other little bits and pieces as well. The same can be said for the tender. Now we have all these beautiful tiny rivets, but you can barely see them. So we're going to use weathering powder. And like taking fingerprints of a criminal, what the weathering powder will do is help raise those out. So this is the very lightly weathered lion, and you can just make out now. I mean, this camera's shocking. I mean, I'm trying to get decent light on it, but it ain't working. That's just making it worse. There we are. So it's artificial light, but it's lighting on the same. You can see just a little bit of the dirt on the chimney there. Again, we're not going overboard with it because it doesn't need it. Final step then is we need to add a crew, and I can think of none better than the purpose-built crew, or should I say purpose-made crew from Model U. This is one of the drivers from Model U, and as you can see, it is superbly rendered and printed and what have you. I've done my absolute best to paint it, but clearly I'm not a painter. I left the jacket grey, painted the trousers black, boots brown, and his cap black as well. So there's two chaps available at Model U Supply, and we're going to fit them into the, I suppose you call it the cab for lack of a better word, the footplate of Lion. And then I'm going to, overnight, I'm going to make a cover for this of a bit of tissue paper and PVA glue, and it'll make a tarpaulin, and then that'll hide the load underneath it. So I'm going to fit these, and here we are. And here we are. Lion upgraded. Subtle weathering, indicative of a life in preservation. We've got the front lamps on from Westall Wagon Works with the shiny crystals in the front, which catch the light beautifully as the loco is going down the rails there. Crew from Model U, super detailed, and they look beautiful. Sat in the cab there. Could have had some real coal at some point, but for now it's fine. And just drying up there is the shunter's truck. Now, I may change this. I will need to weather and paint the tarpaulin once it's fully dry, and tie these barrels down once they're in place. I wanted to put a toolbox on there, but I didn't have anything to hand, so I may readdress and change what's actually on the Matt's truck. But for now, I'm going to call that done. Guys, I really hope you enjoyed that. I absolutely love Little Old Lion. I know it's not sound fitted, but that will change at some point in the future when I can afford the £115 sound decoder from Zemo. So if anyone's feeling generous and wants to bedeck me with the sound file, that would be massively appreciated. No pressure. So why did I do it? Well, why go through all the effort and hassle of making a match wagon with a stay alive in for the loco when it runs well enough to begin with anyway? Well, to be fair with you, I always like having a Stay Alive. I think that Stay Alive is one of the best things about DCC because it gives you 100%, in my opinion, reliable running. And yes, whilst being meticulous with track work and making sure it's absolutely perfect when you lay it down and pristinely clean and your pickups are perfectly clean at every spot, it doesn't always work, and it's so annoying when you've got to go and poke your £150 train to get it moving again, like a 1980s Argos train set. So why not make the most of it, is my opinion on that, and that's what I've done. The match wagon, I may change what's on there, I may not. What do you think? If you know where I can get my hands on some little toolboxes and equipment that perhaps a crew would want to carry on Lion, in a preservation environment, I will say this, in a preservation environment, it's not period correct. It's not 1930s Lion as such running in the 1930s. It would be 1930s Lion in preservation modern day, hence why it's got the lamps and things. And I know they're the wrong type of lamps. And anyway, hope you enjoyed it, guys. And if you want to get a Rapido Lion, I'd recommend it. I know that the titfield thunderbolt set is amazing, and I know it's quite an asking price, but I do genuinely think it's worth it. And if you want to make it run a little bit easier, then thankfully, as you've seen, it's really easy to do it. Just an hour or so with some soldering and a bit of wiring, and you're good to go. Right, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, all that good stuff, and I'll see you all next week. Cheers, folks. Bye-bye.